Jordan Ellis here for LowKick, mate. Welcome to the UFC 270 preview show. I'm with Brandon Lines, who's been helping us out on the site over the last couple of weeks. He's an intern with us, doing great work. Welcome, Brandon. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to it.
So what we're going to be doing today is we're going through UFC 270. Obviously, we've got one of the biggest heavyweight fights of all time, Francis Ngannou, heavyweight champ against interim champ Ciryl Gane. Made even more interesting the fact they used to be teammates and things like that. So we'll jump straight into that fight. What do you make of it, Brandon?
Well, I think it's a good idea right away to just let everyone know there is a bit of bias. I'm a huge Ciryl Gane fan ever since he came on the scene, especially that Tanner Boser fight. I was watching that fight because he's a Canadian guy. I'm a Canadian guy, but really fell in love with the fighter at that point. He's been one of my favorite fighters ever since. So I do want to address that right away. I do think that Ciryl Gane will win the fight. How about you?
Yeah, I think, just first off, I think it is one of the biggest fights of heavyweight history. Obviously, we've had the Brock Lesnar shows and things like that. But for me, skill for skill, these are two of the best heavyweights who've ever done it. I think I edge Ngannou. He's got the experience. I think in his last fight against Stipe, we've seen a real complete version of him. He looked brilliant. He showed the wrestling. He showed how calm he was too. So I personally think that for 3 rounds or so, it'll be close. It'll probably be Ciryl winning, but I think eventually Francis will be able to crack him and get him out of there.
Yeah, for sure. I think you got to look. I think Joe Rogan said it best one time. He said when you're in a Francis Ngannou fight, Francis Ngannou shows up with a bazooka and you just have a gun. But to allude to what you said, I think that is a very good point about Ngannou, because he has been training for that last year. We saw such a new and improved version with him with Eric Nixick at Extreme Couture. He wasn't even injured. He didn't have to go through a process. So he went to Cameroon, came back, and he's just been training on his skills. And I was listening to his coach talk this week, and he actually said that they were originally preparing for a Derek Lewis fight. So they were looking at one specific fighter, but ever since that fell through, they were just between that and the Gane time, the time the Gane fight was announced, they've just been training for anyone and focusing on Francis and skills and what he needs to do to get sharper. So I do think that works in his benefit. But the difference is, instead of showing up with one gun, Ciryl Gane's showing up with 15, I find. So he's got so many different assets. I think the one thing you look at is there is a chance for this fight to become a bit of a snooze fest. You have 2 guys with such weapons coming in. There's a hesitant. You don't want to get killed, right? You look at Lewis and Ngannou, and even recently you had that Johnny Walker and Thiago Santos fight. So I think that could come into play, and I think that plays to Gane's benefit. If he's able to watch out for the nuclear option of Gane the whole fight, then ultimately it's probably going to be Gane picking him apart a bit from the outside, scoring a lot with kicks.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that, at least for a few rounds, but I feel like eventually Ngannou is going to catch him. There's also a couple other things with Gane I'm not fully sold on. I think he looks brilliant but his whole style at heavyweight, I'm not sure how much longevity he can get out of that. To point fight at heavyweight, it's going to be tough, to retain a title that way. I also think that he has been a little bit rushed. What is he not at the minute? 8-0, something like that?
Yeah.
He's new to the sport and they've rushed him quite a lot. So is he ready for the title fight, or is he kind of in that situation where Francis was, where he got mopped by Stipe in the first fight? He might need that. And also the fact that Fernando Lopez, he's been chatting a lot of stuff in the media. But one thing you'll notice throughout his interviews, he's not entirely confident. I feel like even him, despite all the bad things he's had to say around Francis, understands that this is a really tough fight and it's a 50-50 fight. And they keep speaking about win or lose, we're going to fight John Jones eventually. And it just seems like they're not putting all the eggs into this basket. They're kind of happy. They understand that this might not be their time and another time will come. Whereas for Francis, I do think it's now or never, because this fight has so much riding on it for him, just besides obviously becoming undisputed champion. It's also the fact that he can get that John Jones fight, a bumper pay deal from the UFC. He's got leveraging them with Tyson Fury and potential boxing fight. There's a lot on the line for him. Whereas for Ciryl, I think if he loses, he'll live to fight another day and he'll be back and he'll be champion at some point anyway. So, but for me, it is a genuine 50-50 fight, and I can see exactly what you're saying. I can absolutely see Gane picking him apart, dumbfounding him and riding to a decision victory. But I feel like we'll get that for a couple of rounds, and then eventually Patient and Ngannou, the patient predator, will eventually crack him with something. But it's a brilliant fight, and whoever wins goes on to fight John Jones next, which is an even bigger fight. And it's just 2022 promised to be a good one, a heavyweight.
Yeah, it's really hard to disagree with anything you said there, because I've noticed it as well with Lopez, exactly what you said. But I really haven't seen it as much with Gane as I have with Lopez. And Fernand, he's doing the whole job for these two guys selling the fight. You know, that's not really either their forte. Gane's been getting a lot better at English, I must say. His English is improving at a pretty drastic rate. But you know, those guys both like let their talents do the talking in the octagon. So Lopez has had to do a lot of that selling the fight for them. But I do agree with what you're saying there. I think the thing with them looking ahead is Gane. You're right. He has been fed, like, he's had a very easy path to 8-0 in the UFC. They've seen his skills. They've seen the star power right away. They do that with stars all the time. They want to get him there as quick as they can. But the one thing, like I said, I'm pretty sold on just my beliefs about Francis has one path to victory. Like everyone says, the betting lines are kind of shifting in the favor now. They've been swinging Gane's favor the last few ways heavily, because I think everyone's kind of leaning towards this belief. And it's one of those fights that whoever wins, it's going to be probably by the way we expect them to win, right? So the one thing I do want to set the bias aside with Ciryl for a second, though, and take a second to say where I think a big misconception is with everyone thinking about Francis right now. I think that with all the drama that's going on between the vitriol between the two camps and the history there, as well as the whole situation with Francis's contract, I think that the betting lines are shifting because everyone sees the pressure mounting and the drama adding up. But I believe that with what Francis has gone through in his life to get there and what he's overcome to win the championship after beating Stipe, I think by the time he steps in the octagon, that's a non-factor. I think he deserves a little more credit than that. And I think a lot of people are thinking that it's getting to Francis's head, but I think when the clock starts, he's ready to go round one.
Yeah, and I also think that this is a completely polished version of Francis Ngannou. So he's had that mental blip, and after the Derek Lewis fight, he was openly admitting, I kind of froze in there. I had some mental demons to battle. So I feel like he's been through that adversity that Ciryl Gane probably hasn't been through yet. Ciryl Gane, I'm sure he is confident. He's a cool cat. He always looks $1 million, and he's always looked $1 million in the octagon. But there is levels to this game, and I just feel like he is jumping a couple of levels, and it's probably just Francis in time, and it's not Gane's yet. But either way, either man who wins this faces John Jones next, and I'm interested to get your opinion on how John Jones matches up against both of them.
Yeah, for sure. One more point I could allude to at the end, where you say either man wins. Whoever wins this fight, it is massive for the sport of MMA in France. The UFC is going to have to be going there soon, and obviously Ngannou is from Cameroon, but just what it will do for that sport. I don't know if you've seen like what Ciryl Gane has been doing as far as the ministry and getting the sport there. Massive for the sport either way. But as far as a John Jones fight goes, I mean, we haven't seen John Jones in so long, especially in this weight where it's just such an anomaly, right? I mean, the prospect of him fighting either of those guys is it's almost like you're more hyped for it than this fight, and that's in 2 days. Like, it's such a huge fight no matter what. And if it is Ngannou, I've always thought the dream would be to have that fight in Africa. I think that would be an absolutely amazing event. But I think if Francis wins against Ciryl, that should kind of speak to his chances of beating Jones, because they don't really have a similar style, but they are both kickboxers. Like, John Jones obviously a lot better at pretty much every other aspect of MMA, but Ciryl Gane's equally as not good of a kickboxer. So you see how Francis is able to do with the kicks, and that'll be really telling for what he would be like in the octagon against John Jones. And then I think if you have Ciryl Gane and John Jones, that's another one like this where it could be a potential for a snooze fest because of hesitancy, or an absolute banger, two of the best heavyweight kickboxers in the world.
Yeah, I'm a fan who's been waiting for John Jones to jump to heavyweight since since Cain Velasquez was champion, really. And for me, I feel there's a reason he's put it off, and he's also putting it off again because he's taken so much time out the cage to bulk up for it. He understands the task that it is, and I feel like the older he gets, the harder it's going to get to make this jump. So I think either one of these guys will handle John Jones. I do think Jones's plan at heavyweight is to wrestle a bit more, especially with two guys like this who are brilliant strikers. So I think his plan is to bulk up, try and wrestle these guys, but I just think he's left it too long. I feel like we've seen a decline even at light heavyweight. He was having close fights with people who he usually wouldn't have, he wouldn't even entertain it. You know, Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes are not people I think he should really be giving John Jones, who, you know, is the GOAT, really, and any problems at all. But yeah, I think either of these guys will deal with John Jones, but it doesn't mean I'm not absolutely excited to see it. I would give him a slight better chance against Gane, just because Gane is not a one-punch knockout artist, so he could potentially work his way into the fight with striking, then shoot for a takedown. Whereas if he's facing Ngannou, it's going to be very clear from the first bell he's going to be shooting for his life type thing. So yeah, but it's just as I said earlier, absolutely monumental year for heavyweights in the UFC, and I just hope Francis sticks around to be a part of it, because after this fight, he could be one of the biggest stars in the sport. If he beats John Jones, he probably is the biggest star in the sport. So it's although the money might not be there right now, I feel like in 2022, that's the year he's going to get paid.
Yeah, and just one more thing. It's just, I think that when you talk about Gane versus Jones, I think if we are to see that at all, then it will be at that point, aside from this conversation, we'll have such a better understanding of Gane that of Ngannou, sorry, that we'll probably believe that he could beat John Jones. Whereas if Jones and Gane face, I would say, that's just an opportunity for Ciryl to get outclassed. It's probably the only guy he can get outclassed by. So I give John the skill set nod and everything there. But like you said, we haven't seen him in so long, right?
And we could speak about these heavyweights all day, but it's a stacked card we've got, and we'll move on to the second of two title fights. Brandon Moreno against Davison Figueiredo 3. I'll go first on this one. I'm not the biggest fan of these fights. You know, when someone is not necessarily in Davison Figueiredo a dominant champion. He had one defense, and that was a draw against Moreno. So he's not a dominant champion. Then he loses in dominant fashion and gets an immediate title shot off the back. I really don't like that. I felt the same against Rose Namajunas against Weili Zhang too. I don't understand the point of it. I feel like there's enough contenders at 125 to go and get a shot. But here we are, and I've got no doubt about it. For as long as this fight lasts, it'll be a fun one. It'll be competitive, but ultimately, I feel like Brandon Moreno, 27, he's kind of got the world at his feet right now. First Mexican champion, he's becoming a star, and I feel like he's getting better and better, and that'll tell the tale in the end. It'll be competitive for a little while, but I expect Brandon to take over.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I think what you said to me with Gane and Ngannou, it's hard to really argue when you're taking the 2-1 favorite for all those reasons. So there's real no argument in taking Brandon Moreno. He's the favorite to win the fight. And to allude to your point, I think it's probably the absolute worst rematch the UFC has ever made. At least with Rose and Zhang, that was number 2, and she got caught, right? So I mean, we've seen Zhang's skills, so maybe there's a little bit of a better reasoning for that one. But yeah, Moreno could have won the first fight. I think you gave it to Davidson. We all remember the nut shot that kind of made it so it was a draw, but dominant fashion in the second fight, clearly won. And like you said, Figueiredo only had one successful defense at all, and it was a draw. So it really is. I don't know why we're seeing this fight, to be honest, but we're here now. And I have to say, I have some faith in Davison Figueiredo. I think he looks in shape. He looks ripped before the weight cut. Obviously, we're not going to have a great opinion on what he's going to be like until we see him at the scales tomorrow. But I mean, he looks good. He looks ready. He looks motivated. I mean, and Moreno, they're just so kind of equal when they're at their peaks. I can see the fight going to another 5-round war and another great fight, because neither of them I can really see each other knocking each other out. And yeah, I just think they're both going to be at their peak this time.
So is that how you see Figueiredo getting it done, in like a kind of 5-round slugfest, just eking it out?
I do, yeah. Like I said, I see the Ngannou and Gane fight playing out as a bit of a snoozer, not living up to the hype, but I think this one might steal the show and have some fireworks, because if they're both at their peak, I just don't see really, like we saw their chins and what they can do in that first fight, and I just don't see either of them getting knocked out. And with two guys like that, they're scrappy. You know, Moreno's got that Mexican fighter in him. It's just going to turn into a war. Neither of one of them are going to step back and try to get tactical once we get into this third, fourth round. It's going to be two dogs.
Yeah, and that's the reason I go against Figgy, just because his punching power has been like like an anomaly at 125. To see someone hit as hard as he does and get the results he does, but the fact it doesn't work on Moreno has got a solid chin, and I don't really think either guy's going to knock each other out. So when it comes like that on the feet, they're going to exchange techniques, and obviously Figueiredo probably is the crispest striker. But then the option there is for Moreno to duck under and take it to the floor. And I think he's got a massive advantage there. So as close as it will be on the feet, I expect a similar result in. I expect eventually Moreno will duck under, take it to the floor, and probably get another submission win. But if Figueiredo does win, I do think it will be similar to the first, right? 5 rounds, back and forth, and he'll just about edge it. But then where do we go from there? Do you do a 4 fight? These two could fight, every other weekend, and you'd get a different result. So interested to see this one. I do agree it's going to live up to the hype for as long as it lasts, but I do think Moreno will retain and eventually we'll move on from this, hopefully.
If one question I just had for you is, since we talked about this, who do you think it should have been fighting Moreno instead of Figueiredo? Because I think that Alex Morono would have been a good fight, to be honest, and I really thought the UFC was going to make that fight. Alexander Pantoja. Sorry, I always mix those guys up. I don't know why, Morono and Pantoja. But Alexander Pantoja I thought would have been the fight to make.
Yeah, I think Pantoja would have been good. Askarov would have been good. Even Kai Kara France coming off of that Cody win would have been good. Like, obviously you'd have to wait a few months, but it's not, like, for me, it's not the worst matchup. I just don't like it. I feel like people get carried away with champions at the minute. As soon as they win the belt, they're the best flyweight ever. Or, Weili Zhang, for me, she didn't even beat Joanna. I thought Joanna won that fight as well. So, and people were saying, like, Rose has got no chance when she's been she's been one of the best females ever, Rose. So, just these type of fights I don't like, but this actual fight on paper is good. Figgy is, he is a top 125 fighter, and he'd probably beat all them guys we've just been speaking about anyway. The Pantojas, the Ashkarovs, the Kai Kara Francis. So he would have worked his way back. I just would have preferred them to see him do that. So
I agree with you completely. He just didn't completely deserve it, and there was other fights to make. So I'm surprised, but like I said, the thing is with Figgy is we're not going to know till tomorrow morning. He looks ripped before the weight cut, which is obviously a good sign. But it's not just whether him making the fight and how bad he looks. It's like if he does get in there and looks all right, his chin's going to be a question, and his endurance is going to be a question. So we're really not going to know, but. I'm liking what I'm seeing from him this time, at least instead of the last fight. And he does seem motivated, and
And they've got Brandon Royval on standby, I think, just in case he comes in over. So the UFC aren't.
He stayed in wait from last weekend.
Yeah, so they're not totally convinced on him, but Brandon Royval's right there as well. I know he just about nicked a victory, but it's this is not the DJ area anymore. This is a really exciting area for flyweight, and there's lots of up and comers. So this is another division where 2022. I think Brandon Moreno is going to be busy, and he's going to be making a name for himself, and he's going to be defending like 3, maybe even 4 times. I think he's going to be really busy in 2022, all going right on Saturday night.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you're right. If he wins, like, there's a lot of fights to make for him right there. And the flyweight division has been built up a lot recently. And you mentioned him already, but I'd like to see Kai Kara France and do some damage in there. That's my guy. So.
Yeah, and before that, we've got Michel Pereira against Andre Filo. This is a late notice fight. I can't remember who Michel Pereira was meant to fight originally. Who was he meant to fight? I forget about that. But what do you make of this one?
Well, to be honest, I think that the Michel Pereira we've seen of just flying around doing absolutely crazy capoeira shit, excuse my language, those days are over. I think that's still going to be his style. He's still going to show a lot of flash, but that maniac we've seen in there before is long gone. He showed that in his last outing, and that was a great fight at 264. It was Nico Price he took on, and he showed a lot of maturity. So I don't see him taking any steps back from there. He's a heavy favorite, and he's facing a UFC newcomer. I was watching some of his highlights earlier, and Fiallo, he does have some good boxing. He took out former UFC fighter James Vick in some pretty violent fashion, standing up against the fence. So I think the boxing's where he's going to have to rely on if he wants to get a win. But Pereira, heavy favorite, showing a lot of maturity as a fighter. We all know he's a crazy talented guy. I just don't see him losing him. I assume he's probably going to get a finish. Maybe not. I don't think first round, anything drastic, but yeah, I don't see it going the distance. I think Pereira inside the distance. And yourself?
Me and you haven't agreed on anything yet, because I think this is a potential banana skin for Pereira. Pereira is a good fighter, and at 28 years old, I'm not someone to write anyone off, especially that young and obviously that talented. But the gas tank issue is there. I know he beat Nico Price, but in that third round, Nico was putting it on him, and if it went to a fourth, he probably would have got stopped. And we seen it also. Was it who beat him? Was it Tristan Connolly or?
Yeah, Tristan Connolly that was the heaviest underdog I think he's ever lost to. Tristan Connolly was a Canadian guy too. That's why I remember that one.
Yeah, so this is my problem, Michel Pereira. He's brilliant to watch. He is he's putting our streak together. As you said, he looks more mature, but for me, I don't think he's ever going to be a top tier, top 5 welterweight. I'm not convinced he's ever going to break in and become that fighter. There's just a few holes, but he's absolutely capable of proving me wrong. But for me, I think Fialho's got a really good chance of coming in and causing a big upset here because he is a big underdog. I like personally, anyone watch the podcast, I like picking out the underdogs and trying to get some value for your money when you're betting. And I think he might be worth a little bet because he's on a 4-fight win streak. As you said, he beat someone in James Vick, who was a UFC veteran too. So he's only 27 years old. I feel like he's got a lot going for him, but that would be a punt in terms of a bet. Michel Pereira is absolutely capable of going out and blitzing him and making me look stupid. But if I'm looking at the odds in this card and I'm looking for an underdog to back, a 27-year-old on a 4-fight win streak, making his UFC debut against someone who's known for gassing, has lost fights he shouldn't have lost in the past.
Yeah,
I think there's some value in it. So yeah, very very interested to see this one, and it's much more interesting than the original fight Pereira had. I think it was Muslim Salikov.
I do.
Yeah, but yeah,
I do agree. I do agree a lot with what you're saying. There is, sorry to cut you off, man. There is definitely value in betting the dog there, especially as a UFC newcomer, because you never a lot of especially casual fans never seen anything from the guy before. Not a lot of tape on him at all, and he's there, right? So and the odds aren't that crazy. He's only about 3-1 dogs, so it definitely could happen. And you're right, there is value there for sure. I just really think that from what I've seen from Pereira, he's been training full time in Vegas now too, and I just think that we see a more mature guy. I do agree that I don't think he has what it takes to ever become a top 5 welterweight, but I think that he believes he does, and I think he really wants to get there instead of just being the guy that puts on fun fights going forward.
Yeah, definitely. There's been improvement definitely in Pereira. It was just obviously that Nico Price one. That's a fight for me with his talent. He should be dominating it, probably getting the finish in all honesty. I know Nico's tough, but the level of difference between his quality and Nico, for me, it's night and day. So he should have got him out there.
The reason for the gas tank is he is just absolutely massive at welterweight.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
Huge if you look at him in there.
Yeah, and I just think that's a problem for a lot of welterweights, isn't it, really? So you've got the Darren Till from my neck of the woods. He's not a welterweight, he's too big, but he's also a little undersized for middleweight. So there needs to be something in the middle, but that's a conversation for another day. For today, I just think Pereira, yeah, he is the favourite, and you've got Andre coming in on short notice, taking this fight against against a guy who's been a killer in the past. He's the favourite for a reason, but for me, if I'm looking at underdogs on this card, that's the one I'm looking at, and really excited to see how that fight plays out, because 28-year-old against a 27-year-old, 2 young fighters on streaks. It's a great fighter. Appetizers for the 2 main fights coming up after that.
Yeah, and like I said, after the main event and the co-main, there's really not a ton of names on this card, but if you look into these fighters a lot, there's a ton of fun fights, so it should just be a good night all around.
Yeah, and before that, we've got Cody Stamann against Said Nurmagomedov. Stamann has been that guy at the weight where he seems to only fall to the best fighters, and in this fight, he's coming up against someone who isn't quite there yet. He is a prospect at this point, potentially capable of reaching that level, but we're not sure. This is kind of his acid test. Do you think Said Nurmagomedov's going to pass it, or do you think Cody's going to get the win?
I'm more curious to see if we're going to be on the same page in this one for once, but I think Said's going to win this one. I think you gotta typically you have an American against a Dagestani. The Dagestani is going to be the wrestler. The American might be the striker, but it's actually the opposite. We got Stamann, who's a wrestler, boxer. Like he said, he only loses to elite competition. But I think this Nurmagomedov guy's the real deal. I've been looking at his highlights the last couple of days, and he's an elite striker. And I really think that the odds. I'm gonna go with the favorite again here this time. I just see him getting it done. probably by finish. I think he'll get him done inside the distance.
Yeah, I probably would agree with you on this one. I don't have a strong pick. This is one of them fights where I'm not really sure how it's going to go. I'm just excited to see if Nurmagomedov can pass the acid test that this is, or if Cody can kind of, get back in that win column and get back into one of them fights that he struggled to get through lately. So although I do tend to lean towards Nurmagomedov, I really don't have a strong pick on this one. This is one I'll just be sitting back watching. Certainly won't be betting on. And just enjoying.
Yeah, same with me. It's just like I don't know too much about the fighters, but like I said, I've been trying to brush up on the last couple of days, and I'm kind of a little swept away by some of the skills I've seen with Nurmagomedov. So plus the namesake, you don't really too often fare too well when you bet against the Dagestanis.
Yeah, and before that, we've got a really fun fight between two Brazilian submission specialists in Rodolfo Vieira and Wellington Turman. This is another one. I'm backing the underdog in this. I like Wellington in this. I think his BJJ skills should play into it quite a lot. He should be able to resist Vieira's attacks early on, tire him out as we've seen in the Hernandez fight, and maybe finish him on the feet, or at least cruise to a decision win. How do you see this one going?
I couldn't agree with more with you on this one, man. I'm glad we're on the same page, very, very definitively on this one. But you want to talk about a gas tank? I don't think there's ever been a fighter in the history of the UFC who has a more questionable gas tank than Rodolfo Vieira. We saw that Hernandez fight, probably submission of the year, absolutely crazy. Now he has won since then. He beat Dustin Stoltzfus his last time out. But I agree. I think that Wellington, even if I don't want to flat out come out and say that I think he's going to win the fight, I think this is the best place to get your money on a dog on this card. I believe he lost his last outing, correct?
I think he beat Sam Alvey last time, but
he did beat Sam Alvey last time. That was correct. It was a while back, but I think this is probably the best place to get your money in on Turman. He's got some power.
Turman, you look at his record, it's 2-3 in the UFCs. I think he's had a couple of knockout losses, so he's not the most impressive guy resume-wise, but when you watch him, there is things to like. He is a bit naive with his, the way he fights and things like that, but there's some talent there, and I feel like he's only 25 years old, so there's plenty of time to work on that. To be in the UFC and to be winning fights and things like that at 25 years old, it is so impressive. So they're the guys I never write off, and when I watch them, there is talent there. So I feel like in terms of stylistically matching up, he's got a BJJ black belt. He should be able to deal with Vieira on the floor.
Yeah,
get it to the feet, and he's got the hands as well. So I feel like this is a really nice fight for him, where a lot of people will be picking against him. I think it will be an upset when he pulls it off. But in terms of strong picks for an underdog, this is the strongest one, as you said. The one I said earlier is more of a feeling than anything else. This one is really, I would be quite surprised if Damon didn't win this fight.
I agree. When I looked at this card, I said this is 100% the best place to get your money in, because like you just said, he's been knocked out twice. If you have any real scare about him getting finished, it's by knockout. You might question his chin a bit, but Vieira is the furthest thing from a knockout threat, so that's not even going to be an issue. And like you said, he's got a BJJ black belt of his own, even though Vieira is probably one of the best practitioners on earth. At least he's competent there, and he'll be smart enough to know what to avoid if he gets himself in a dangerous situation, I believe. Like you said, Hernandez, look what he did. And I mean, he has great jiu-jitsu. He showed it off, but he wasn't scared to go in there as long as he knew that he would have an out clause pretty much when he got to the ground against Vieira.
Yeah, and it's just that type of fighter, they come to MMA late and they try the best to just not make the striking issue an issue, or the cardio issue an issue. But eventually you come into these guys like Hernandez, like Turman, who have got a bit of everything and are able to exploit it and show all your flaws. So that's what I expect to see. And I think a lot of people must be betting on this without actually looking at who Wellington is and what he's talented as, because the fact he's a pretty considerable favourite is quite surprising. But the fact that when he has won sensationally. So Vieira has probably picked up a lot of new fans doing that, and I think does that round out our card, the main card?
Yeah, that's the whole main, and then that's the final prelim, that fight that we just discussed right there. There was a couple other ones. Did you want to go first? Do you have any other ones you want to take a quick look at?
So
the only on the prelims,
the only one I've highlighted, and I feel like this should be on the main card, is Supporter against Yeah, Topuria against Charles Jourdain. I just think it's such a great fight. Honestly, I feel this is better than the fight Topuria was meant to have originally. Jourdain for me is the toughest test of his career. I know Ryan Hall is a bigger name and things like that, but I feel like Jourdain is a better fighter overall. But for me, Topuria is going to make a statement here. I feel like besides Khamzat Chimaev, he is the best prospect the UFC have got. He seems to have it all. 24 years old, Georgian, Spanish. He's got the boxing. He's just got it all, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him there with someone who can strike and has the ability to cause him problems. But ultimately, I think Jourdain just gets hit a bit too much, and that's going to be his downfall.
Yeah, for sure. And this isn't a guy you want to get hit against at all. And I think that's why, this is the biggest underdog on the card by far. I think Jourdain's coming in about minus 500 right now, maybe even minus 600. But you're right, man. Topuria is just such a talent, and he's got the mental too. Like he is just dialed in. I was watching an interview with him yesterday, and he pretty much called, I forget who it was that bailed out of the fight. The original fight, but it was due to a COVID. It was due to a COVID positive test 3 weeks ago. And Ilya Topuria said, "Look, man, like my first fight in the UFC, I COVID tested 14 days before my fight, and then I waited to the fight like 5 days before and wasn't tested. Like it wasn't an acceptable reason to him." And he was pretty much kind of apologetic, but he said it sucks that Charles Jourdain's going to have to be the one that takes the brunt for it because I'm going to finish this guy in the first round. And to be honest, that's probably what's going to happen. But you want to give Jourdain a little bit of credit. This is a spot where if he puts up a good fight, I mean, like it could go. I can see him withstanding getting knocked out for sure and going the distance. But he does hang his chin out there a lot. You saw what he did in his last fight. He is a good striker, and he almost got a finish right at the last second with that body front kick. That was crazy. But yeah, I don't see any way you can really go against Topuria here at all. And yeah, I would say I agree. I know this is a little off topic, but Khamzat, Topuria, and I would say Song Yadong is another great prospect. But him and Topuria are neck and neck. Is just the future of those divisions.
Yeah, I feel like them two are the guys who are going to really rush to the title, and Charles Jourdain is really good. Like eventually he might be a title contender. He's only 26. He's already got some good wins, but there is a few holes in his game. Whereas Topuria, although he's a couple of years younger, seems to be much more polished, much more ready for that push right now. So he's someone like Khamzat who I can see in 2022 really running through the division really quickly. And at the top of featherweight, it's, besides Max Holloway, there's not a lot of guys who are like chomping at the bit for the title shot. So, Topuria wins here, they quickly turn him around. You know what? It could really happen. He could end up on that London card in March, and he could, get him another run out, and it really builds steam from there. So, excited to see him in 2022. I think Ciryl Gane, this is everything he's about. Like, he's a game guy. I'm not surprised he's stepping up on a few days' notice to fight someone like this, because he's just that type of dude. Obviously, believes in his skills, but I think he's just bit off a little bit more than he can chew in this one. He's probably going to take a tough loss, but he'll be back, and I think he'll be back in the mix, but maybe a few years down the line.
Yeah, and I agree. Home is where the heart is for me too. Canadian guy again from Montreal, Quebec somewhere, Jourdain. So that's who I'm going to be pulling for. But I am a Topuria fan. I think he's awesome. And like I said, I love the psyche of the guy. But to allude to what you said, as far as him kind of being able to vault up in the rankings quickly, I think this is the perfect fight for him to do that, because unless he catches him early, which is always good too, with the way Jourdain gets hit, Topuria is going to have a chance to show off a lot of his weapons if it goes the distance. And that's the kind of fight that turns heads and gets you moving up quicker. So I agree with you heavy on that one, man.
Yeah. Have you got anything else on the rest of the card?
Yeah, just one last one I want to give a shout out to. I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario, about a town of 150,000 in Canada. We have a fighter this weekend making her UFC debut. She's actually opening the card up. First fight of the night, Jasmine Jasdavicius. She's taking on Kay Hansen. She is about a 3-1 dog, but she's older. She's got a lot longer reach. And I've been looking at some of the Hansen fights. She is, I can see why she's a heavy favorite. She's had a good run, especially to get to the UFC. But it's two totally different styles. Jasdavicius, she's a bit of a longer fighter, fights from a distance, and Hansen's more of a dog, got that style, get you down. So it could be a good fight, but the odds have been swinging in the favor. I think she was about 3-1 dog. Now it's about 2.5 to 1 dog. So yeah, it's just a little hometown pride there. Shout out Jasmine Jasdavicius. So hopefully she can get that one done for Niagara this weekend.
So if she gets it done, how is she getting it done?
Decision, absolutely by decision. I think all of her wins are by decision so far, but yeah, she's a smart fighter, fights from the outside.
Yeah, and Kay Hansen, she's looked a really bright prospect. I think she's like 22. Unlucky last time out to lose against Corey McKenna, who's from the UK. Obviously, it was a nip and tuck fight and could have went either way, but Kay Hansen come away with the loss, but she's looked good too. So, yeah, and that's the first fight tonight, isn't it? So it's
that's kicking off the card. And Kay Hansen's in front of her hometown. Family and friends will be there, so should be a good one. Maybe a couple faces in the house early.
Lots on the line for you. You'll be watching from fight 1 then, won't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Fight 1.
Who else? Just looking at the card. Obviously, we've got Barcelos on there. He was hyped as the next big thing, bantamweight for half a second, and then lost one, and he's back on the prelims against Victor Henry. So interested to see him. Not necessarily got a big pick on that. And then also we've got Trevin Giles dropping down to welterweight. He's been a middleweight for some time now. Picked up some good wins. He's got a win over, he's got wins over Ryan Spann, Brendan Allen, Roman Dolidze, James Cruz at middleweight, and then he's dropping down after his last loss. So
yeah, that was at 264, I believe. I forget who it was to, but it was on that Brian Hall and Tupuria, and I think it was right after that fight. I have picks for all these fights. I didn't look too much into them, but I have Giles defeating. Giles is a slight underdog. It's almost a pick 'em, but Giles is a slight underdog. I think I could see Trevin Giles win that fight. I've liked what I've seen from him before. And then Barcelos, he is one of the bigger favorites on the card. I think he's about minus 115, minus 120 or something like that. So I've got him as well.
Yeah, well, besides the who wins titles and things like that, something I always look forward to is who's going to stand out in this card, because the great thing about these events is anyone can kind of have the performance of the night, get that 50k bonus, and really start to make a name for themselves. So I think Topuria is going to be one of them guys, but as I also think Barcelos could make a big statement. Obviously, Nurmagomedov we've got there as well. So I think there's lots of intrigue underneath the two main fights where you can see someone might come out and make a big statement, have a big performance, and potentially like create themselves into a new superstar. So lots to look forward to.
Like I said, like just not a ton of huge names on the card, but a lot of ton of fights, ton of fun fights.
Yeah, and that pretty much just wraps us up. That's UFC 270 this Saturday. Anything you want to add just before we go?
Oh no, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's been great to have you. Thanks again, Brandon, for coming. Hopefully we'll have you again in the near future. And thanks everyone for watching UFC 270 this weekend.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.